Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Solutions, Not Just Problems. We are your hosts, Vanessa K and Be Real. Be Real, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Hot here, hot, humid, and hazy.
Yeah. Same here. Weather's in the 80s here. You know how it is in the South, North Carolina, Georgia. We got similar weather. It's always hot come May, June. It's getting ready to start getting up in the 90s. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
this hot weather here.
Before
And
we get started, I actually found a good show that I got to shout out. Remember how we used to watch Succession?
the session.
Succession. Remember how we used to watch
Yeah, yeah,
Succession?
yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
got another Netflix one out there. It's called Rotten Legacy. Just as
Okay.
good, just as intense as
Really?
Succession. So,
Oh, that's
gotta
good.
give a shout out to that. Everybody got to watch that. I'm hooked on that one now.
You said Rotten Legacy.
Rotten Legacy.
All right, all right.
You
I'm
know,
I'm,
and
I'm gonna check
Scandal,
that out. I'm gonna check that out this weekend, as a matter of fact.
Scandal within the family.
Okay.
So, we're back in the studios. The topic this week. What's the topic this week, B?
We are talking about building wealth in our community.
Mm.
We are really going to talk about some things as far as starting a business, personal finances, how to manage your money, how to invest. I mean, we're going to talk about a whole host of different things that I think are going to be useful. We're all at this time, looking for ways to increase our bottom line, to increase our wealth, to get to the point where we have generational wealth and we're able to pass it on to our children. So we really are going to get into some things and maybe have some guests on that are professionals in that area as well. So please stay tuned for this segment or this new edition here. I'm sorry, and also make sure that you share this information with people that you think that could benefit from this.
Yes, because this is such a broad topic. As I started researching it, I'm realizing, this is a lot bigger than this is going to be a while. We're going to be on this topic for a while because there's so much to address, and there's so many areas where it touches. We also have historical and systemic barriers within our culture that we have to face that are specific to our culture. And B, you talked about this in one of our prior episodes. You went through those steps of uh, our history and how, that all has gotten us to where we are today.
Hmm.
Slavery being one of them, right? That was a 450-year um, process. That was a long time, and that caused a lot of psychological, you know, uh, has a psychological effect on our community even to today. Then we went through the Jim Crow, the divorce rates in the 70s, the high divorce rates, the teen pregnancies in the early 80s, and then the crack epidemic in the late 80s, early 90s. All of those things have had a hindrance on our community. So it's time for us to break those cycles, and it's time to start educating and teaching how to get through that. Um, some of the systemic barriers, one of the systemic barriers that come to my mind, is higher education. And we've been under the illusion that higher education equates to higher paying jobs, right?
Hmm.
Uh, But the cost of education is so high that it actually disqualifies certain groups. So, and we're part of that group, so that's one of the things we have to talk about. Anything come to mind when you think of, some of the barriers that hold us back?
Oh, absolutely. As you know,
Hmm.
having us having conversations over the past several years, I used to work in the education field. I worked at a high school back in Rhode Island, Mount Pleasant, Central High School, and I think I might have been at Hope for a little bit too, my alma mater.
Hmm.
But I had an opportunity to work with kids to help them get into college. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I placed over 500 kids into college.
Hmm.
Okay. Over, let's say, an 8 year span. So you're talking about maybe a little over 60 kids a year.
Hmm.
Okay. and we had a program called Rhode Island Educational Talent Search. Shout out to all the TRIO programs out there, which is also Upward Bound over at Rhode Island College, TD over at URI. That's all part of the TRIO program. And what we did was we helped kids with study skills, life skills, college applications, financial aid, getting scholarships, took kids on trips to schools. And in my 20s, this is one of the greatest experiences of my life. Um, and it really allowed me to understand the process involved in getting into school, but more so the expense. You know
Hmm.
how expensive it was for kids to get into school. And I went to school back in the 90s. Okay, I'm sorry, in the 80s. Graduated 1990, and when I got out of school, I owed like about $2,000. Okay, went to Rhode Island College, got a degree in accounting, and luckily I was able to have a minimal amount of money that I owed, and I was able to pay that back off in a year.
Mm.
Um, Kids are not in that situation anymore. They're not dealing with a couple of $1,000s. I think tuition at Rick might have been like $3 or $4,000 a year. Okay, and
Right.
if you look on campus, it might have been 10 grand. Now it's probably double, triple, and we're
Mm.
talking about state school. We're not even
Oh
talking
yeah, I
about.
know.
So the
Put my
cost
kids
of,
through there.
huh?
I had to put my kids through state school. I know. It's up there.
Absolutely. So it's really gotten to the point where a lot of people, unless you want to take on a lot of debt, you know, it's really not affordable to a lot of people. And let me just tell you, I'm just going to give you a little caveat, little piece here, that a lot of these schools are set up to where you get financial aid. You start out with 100%. Second year, you get 75%. Third year, you get 50%. Fourth year, you get 25%. I'm just giving out general numbers, okay? You're not going to get a full package for 4 years.
Mm-mm.
So what ends up happening is, as the years go on and you're taking on more debt and it becomes more expensive, that's why you see such a large dropout rate amongst, kids that grew
Right.
up in impoverished neighborhoods, and so forth. So, I've got some experience in that area, and I can tell you that the education costs today are just out of this world. I
It's
think the
crazy.
average cost of an education is what, about 40 grand a year?
Probably 50, a little higher than that.
50.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
crazy.
See?
And I don't see, I'm going to be honest. I didn't graduate from college till I was 48. And it wasn't because I couldn't afford it or, didn't want to go, anything like that. It was just I don't see the value
Mm,
um in college, the college curriculum that matches that price point. I just
mm,
don't see it. I think that the curriculum itself needs to be updated and improved.
mhm.
If it's especially for that price tag. So I just the whole system, the way it works, I'm a little negative on it. I just, but I did do it. I did go and get my degree. And it does help, but yeah, it was a big price to pay.
And I hear that from a lot of people, and I can tell you right now, having gone through the process at a younger age, I was able to learn about being disciplined, about being on time, learning study habits, being independent, So it wasn't so much the college education itself, but the college experience, okay,
Experience.
that helped me along in life. Okay.
That's what actually helped
Yeah.
me.
So, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I can't remember anything that I did as far as cost accounting. I mean, if you go to if you study accounting, okay, people don't realize you got to take 11 courses,
Hmm.
okay, on average to become an accountant, okay,
Right.
or to get an accounting degree. I'm sorry. So it's a real tedious, strenuous, intensive program that you have to go through. And a lot of people just they drop out. Okay.
Mm.
They start out doing it and they say, oh, I'm gonna go into business management or marketing, you know. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, Vanessa. It really does. I don't know if the education itself really equates to you, making the type of money you plan on making, but they do say that over the course of your lifetime, you're going to make at least $1 million more as a result of having a college education than those that just have a high school diploma.
No,
So,
that is true. I do believe that. And when you think about it, I actually went through that. I will say that one of the reasons that prompted me to go back was my manager came to me and basically broke it down, and he said just that. I can't pay you anymore until you get a degree. It's really about a paycheck. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on what it puts you in a certain pay status,
Yes.
so you can do the exact same. And I did. I got my degree. Came back the next day, was in the same job, no promotion, nothing. Same exact job doing the same thing, but my pay changed.
So let me just tell you, if there are opportunities that are available to people with college degrees, like you're talking about,
Hmm.
where people that don't have it, they don't have access to those opportunities. And that's the
Exactly.
way it was when I was coming up. But I'm seeing now where kids that have a high school diploma, maybe a little advanced training, taking on a certificate, making 80, $90,000 a year. Okay.
Right.
I've got people that are close to me that make over 100 grand with a high school diploma. So I get exactly what you're saying.
Now we got to teach them how to spend that money correctly,
And
mushroom that
and
money.
that's what we're going to talk about moving forward here.
That's what you don't get in college. We got to teach you how to spend that money. Another systemic barrier is the corrupt lending practices. I see this all the time in real estate. Um, it comes in the form of, because home ownership is a way of starting to build wealth, right? But a lot of people are not in a position, especially today, to buy a home. Another one is balloon payments, right? Offering low monthly payments that accumulate into a large unexpected lump sum and often causing the borrower to go into default. Equity stripping, and this is what we see all the time. We get those letters in the mail, tap into your equity, structuring loans so that the lender takes the borrower's home equity through refinancing. And this oftentimes sets them up for foreclosure. So there's things that go on behind the scenes, when it comes to borrowing from lenders. Another systemic barrier is unethical practices and equal pay. And I'm sure we've all gone through that at some point in time. You see something that's just not right. Uh, the females did it in the equal pay for women. That era came out, and just unethical hiring practices. Can you speak to any unethical? Have you gone through that, or what can you speak to when it comes to hiring?
Um, no, I mean, I can tell you, I'm here in the South where you have less strict hiring practices and less strict firing practices. In other words, the racial issues that you may deal with, or the issues that you deal when it comes to gender, or with someone perhaps that has a disability, is not as prevalent here in the South. Okay, because they have a right to hire who they want, just like they have the right to fire who they want.
Hmm.
Okay, at any time, without really giving a strong just cause, to be honest with you.
Right.
Um, and I was in a position one time where I had a job, last job I had, which was about, I don't know, wow, 2011. Wow,
Mm.
it's 10 years ago. Okay.
That was a while ago.
Huh?
That was a while ago.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a situation when I first got there, and this was in 2000, and I got threatened, because I spoke up. And we were in a meeting, and they asked, and they said, "Hey, does anybody have any concerns about, what we're doing, and as far as what your responsibilities are, and so forth and so on." And I, being from up north, I gave my opinion. And as a result of giving my opinion, I got pulled into the office and told, "Hey, basically that's not how we do it down here."
Right. We
And
asked you what you're not supposed to answer.
and yeah, you don't want to show up your boss type thing. So I learned early on, like, okay, if I'm going to talk to somebody, I need to do it one on one, and not get to the point where you're so open about it in a large group like that. So yeah, I learned my lesson quite early on. That was almost what? That was 25 years ago. Yep.
And it's interesting how on some parts of the country it's handled differently.
Mhm.
Like you said, you're coming from up north, that was a totally different, you're in a totally different mindset and space when it comes to your job, and you're almost able to speak up, and then
Mhm.
down south, the culture's a little different. So But on that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. So, picking up where we left off, we went through the systemic and historical barriers that have been keeping us back. And like I said, looking at financial literacy, it is a big topic. So today we're going to get into some of the broader things that need to be done to start building wealth in our community. And then as the weeks go forward, we'll start breaking it down to a more personalized approach. But one of the things is we need to promote financial literacy by teaching budgeting, saving, investing, credit management, and retirement planning. These are some things that we can begin right in our home, start to learn and teach ourselves, get involved on how to budget and pass this down to our children. The earlier the better. Our children need to be taught how to budget right out the when you start your first job, how to save your money, how to invest. Money is supposed to be used as a tool. And we want to put ourselves in positions where we can use it as a tool and not as a source, right? Credit management, how to maintain your credit, and retirement planning. Community workshops is another way to get involved, right? Partner with the schools, partner with churches. Churches, I mean, the whole civil rights era started in church. Dr. King was a preacher first, right? The community centers host events on money management. BB, what's your thoughts on promoting that?
I'm always a proponent of financial education. Probably mentioned this in the past. I used to be a financial educator with a company called Consumer Credit Counseling Service, and I actually went out into the community. This was after I left doing the working with the TRIO programs in Rhode Island, where I was working with kids, and I transitioned, came to Atlanta, started working with Consumer Credit Counseling Service, started out as a counselor, and then transitioned into being a financial educator, certified financial educator. And I was able to go out into the community and teach thousands of people on issues pertaining to personal finances, credit, housing, how to purchase a home, what to do if you're facing foreclosure. So I'm quite aware of what you're talking about with the community workshops. Do the home buyer workshop every Saturday for 5 years. So I definitely am a strong advocate, for community programs, community workshops, and financial literacy.
Entrepreneurship and business support is another way to meet this goal, right? Support Black-owned businesses. Shop at, invest in, and promote businesses within the community. Okay, I have to stop on this one. This goes both ways. Um, I'm a big advocate for supporting Black-owned businesses, but we as in the Black community got to do better at presenting our businesses. If we want the support, we
Really?
gotta do better at presenting our businesses, carrying ourselves in a certain way.
Think so?
Huh?
You think so?
Yeah, I
I
think
live in Atlanta. Tell me about it.
sometimes it's subpar is not good enough.
Listen, we're out of control, and a lot of us are really not. We're not professional. We're not. We don't provide good customer service. We don't realize the importance of retaining customers. We don't understand how to market and promote our business in a professional way. There's just so many different things that we're going to touch on when it comes to entrepreneurship and business that and I'm glad you broke that out because I didn't really want to get too caught up into, you know, us and how we deal with business, but really it's something that needs to be addressed, and we have to talk about this. We have to do better, people. We've got to get to the point where you appreciate your customer because they have other options. They can go elsewhere. They can decide not to support your business. So taking your customer for granted and getting to the point where you're thinking that, hey, you know this is the only place where they can come and shop or do business with, nah, I've got plenty of options. So it's really important that as Black business owners that we respect the customer, provide great customer service, and provide a great product or service along with that customer service.
And I said that to say that that's what we do. You know, I wanted to let our audience know that we're not beating up on you or anything. That's just what we do. You know, between Be Real with his marketing background and me with the business development and formation and all of that, call us. We can get you on track with
Mhm,
your business. That's what
mhm.
we are a resource for you.
You know,
And it,
but
mhm.
I want to say something too, Vanessa, and is that it's okay for you to need help. Okay.
Right,
We
right,
are not all experts in every area. So if you need help, okay, it's okay to reach out to people, but also understand that help is going to cost money. Okay. And this is one of the things that I find with a lot of Black business owners is we're trying to have shortcuts. We're trying to find ways to do things without having to pay people. You know, we want to bring in the money. We want to make all the money we can. But when it comes to marketing, when it comes to investing in our business, when it comes to hiring people, you know, we want to pay the bare minimum. Okay. And that's not the way you want to conduct business if you want to be able to have business a profitable business over the long term, you know,
right,
and trying to get to the point where, you know, you're either trying to scam somebody or you're trying to get the quick dollar or you have that hustle mentality. That is not the way to go when it comes to business, folks. Okay.
right,
And we've got to get out of that mindset and get to the point where we start understanding, you know, what business is really all about. And that's hopefully what we're going to cover, you know, over these next several weeks.
oh
You
yeah.
know,
Because there's no shortcuts in business. There is an underlying business process that, and the process will slow you down
can you
or
say that
mess you
again?
up if you're taking too many shortcuts.
Can you repeat that word again? You said the word process.
Yes, there is an
Okay.
underlying business process. You know, it's unwritten, but there is a way, and the process will slow you down or mess you up if you're taking too many shortcuts. I mean, you just,
Process is undefeated.
hmm?
Process is undefeated.
That's right.
In other words, you're not going to beat process. Okay. You're going to have to go through some things in order for you to come out on the other end. In order for your business to do well, I don't care how great your product is, how great your service is, you're going to have to go through a process. Okay. And it's difficult. I'll be honest with you. I hate process, you know, but I also love process.
Right,
And the reason why I say that is, yeah, when you're going through it, you know, it really is something that, wow, I got to go through this. I got to wait all this time. But once you've gone through it, then you understand, okay, that's why I had to go through that process in order for me to get to the goal that I was trying to achieve. So,
right. Another thing we have to try or aim to acquire is home ownership. That does build wealth over time, right? We need to encourage home ownership, not be afraid of it. I'm a real estate advisor here in North Carolina, and you'll always hear me say it's a good time to buy a home. But it's not just because I'm a real estate agent, it is a better, I know the industry. You know, you're better off buying a home than renting a home. Another thing is be an advocate to combat discrimination, you know, and support fair housing practices. That is one of the things that does hold us back, you know, and we have to defeat that and come together with that. Form real estate investment groups, form community investment clubs to purchase and develop properties together. Now, I see this trend happening, you know, where one person may not be able to buy a piece of property, but four of us pooled together can buy a piece of property.
mhm.
So that's a trend that's coming out, but it does build wealth. Real estate does build wealth over time, and understanding those concepts can help.
You know, I want to say in hindsight, um, I had a couple of friends back in the day,
Hmm.
just going back, you know, 20, 25 years, who invited me to invest in property.
Hmm.
Had I done that, let's say during the 2008 housing crisis, you know, probably be in a whole lot different position right now financially,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't
Absolutely.
really think there's ever a bad time to invest in property. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Obviously you want to purchase property where there's some equity, built up, before you purchase it. But over the long haul, let's say a 10, 20-year period, and once again, let's go back to that word process. If you're willing to go through the process and kind of, get to the point where you're building up that portfolio, I think over time, you know, uh, investing in property is a great way to build wealth.
Right. You just have to know the market.
And Vanessa's the one that you want to go to, folks,
That's
if you
right.
go to the Carolina area.
I'll
How,
get you in or out, in a property or out of a
how many
property.
years experience do you have, Vanessa?
I'm going on 5 now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. But well, 5 in the on the, traditional buying and selling on the market.
Hmm.
So I started an investment, as you know, back in 2017. So on the other side, on the investment side, yeah, I've been at it since 2017.
Okay. So 8 years. Good.
I got some real estate under me. Mentorship is another way, especially those of us who are a little further ahead and have gone through this. We got to start turning around and reaching back and mentoring our younger, especially our younger people.
I remember when mentorship really meant something,
Hmm.
when I was coming up, going through college and then, postgraduate. Um, I really, had a lot of mentors in my community that I'd like to give a shout out to. Um, One was Dr. Morris, rest in peace. Phil Addison,
Hmm.
from East Side, who was the
That's my uncle, by the way. It was my
oh, is it? Yeah, Phil Addison was head of the recreation department. He
Mhm.
was chairman of the Civic Center, Providence Civic Center, which is now, what is it called?
With the Dunkin' Donuts.
No, they didn't switch it up again.
Oh gosh, got to get
Uh,
back up to Rhode Island soon.
it's called, it's like BAM or TAM or so, it'll come to me. But anyway, he was the chairman of the Civic Center, and he used to get us tickets to concerts and ball games and different events that were taking place, and Mr. Lopes, Mr. Cavallo, Big Bev, God rest his soul, who recently passed, Bevel Waite. I'd like to give a shout out to the Waite family and to Bevel Waite, who was a great mentor as far as sports and being able to guide us in the right direction. I know I'm leaving out some, but that was a big thing back in the day, and I hope we can bring that back. It's when I saw mentorship, I'm like, you know what? There were so many people that guided me after my father died when I was 11 years old. And, I just want to give thanks to them and tell kids nowadays, don't shy away from adults. Get to the point where if you find somebody you can trust that has your best interests at heart, get to the point where you work with that person, ask them questions, because as older people, we love to be able to give advice. We love to be able to help those that are coming, after us. So take advantage of that.
And not only mentorship for younger people, we need mentorship too. As you grow, you need mentorship.
Mhm.
And like you said, starting a business or, we need mentorship. It just needs to be part of our culture going forward. We need to embrace that on every level because my model is once you stop learning, you stop really living. I mean, really, what is there left? You know what I mean? You have to have that open mind and be willing to constantly evolve.
And a lot of times we no longer have those, let's say, offline type relationships, But this is something that I would suggest that you do is sign up on LinkedIn, you know,
Hmm.
connect with people on LinkedIn, and it's a professional platform, unlike let's say like a Facebook or Instagram, but it gives you an opportunity to link up with other professionals, and there's where you can find mentorship online. Because I know a lot of us don't necessarily communicate face to face quite the way we did back in the day. But LinkedIn is a definite positive, I think, when it comes to trying to link up and trying to find a mentor.
Right, right. You know, what makes up a community?
Mm.
I see more and more credit unions coming up in the Latino community, hospitals makes the community, retail, you know. We need to, and that's something that we're lacking in our community. We need to start creating our own local credit unions, create our own banks, create our own stores where we're tightly knit and we're supporting each other. That's called collective economics.
There was a lot of that when I first came to Atlanta back in 2000. There were a lot of black-owned banks. There were, um, what did you just call it? Um,
Collective economics, credit
no,
unions.
credit unions.
Hmm.
Credit unions here that you could participate in, not necessarily black-owned, but credit unions where people within the community, or if you worked at like a Delta or, if you worked in a specific industry, like when I worked at Consumer Credit, I was able to become part of a credit union. And credit union has some advantages that banks don't. Okay. And one of the things is some of the fees are not as high. Okay.
Right.
And just like having a checking account, I still have a checking account right now with an institution without having to have a minimum amount, in that checking account. You could
Hmm.
literally have $10 now, keep it open for whatever, for
Hmm.
however long you need it. Or let's say, like if you had an IRA, which we're going to talk about things like this later on, but if you had an IRA and let's say you wanted to transfer that your 401k, you left the job and now you don't know what to do with the 401k, you got $100,000. Well, you could transfer it to a credit union that in their IRA, at least it was for this particular credit union, was not indexed by the stock market. In other words, it wasn't based on whether the stock market, went up or down as to the performance of your IRA. And
Hmm.
we right now a lot of people are losing money, you know.
Right.
So when I transferred my 403b, which is similar to a 401k, but it just happened to be for a nonprofit, when I transferred it, I was able to, let's say, get a 1 or 2% fixed interest rate, okay, as opposed to the up and downs that someone may have had if they went with a traditional bank like a Wells Fargo, Capital One, or let's say like a Citizens Bank if you're in Rhode Island, you know. So it really, when it comes to financial institutions, learn about the opportunities that are available to you, and I think that credit unions are an excellent option.
Right. And you brought out a point that fixed 2% rate, that's
Yes.
for a period of time. You build wealth, and I think people have to understand that wealth is different from riches, being rich. I'm sorry, wealth is built over a period of time. It is a long-term thing. Um, and requires a lot of energy. Estate planning, intergenerational wealth transfer. Now we're passing it down to our children and our grandchildren, right? And that entails estate planning. Talk about the wills. I know it's a touchy subject. Nobody wants to
Mm.
talk about it, but the
Yes.
younger you can get your will done, the better. Talk about your wills. Trust. Um, who you're signing as your trustees. Asset protection is another thing. If you have, if you own a home, protect that asset. And life insurance. With the wills, I know it's we don't want to talk about it, but
Mhm.
how many people do we know that have like celebrities, right? They've had all this money and then they
Yep.
pass and the family's left in an uproar because nobody knows what to do with it. And even worse, the state comes in and takes it because it's
Mm.
not, it's not ironed out. It's not, assigned.
And there are things, other uh, financial instruments like a living trust, you
Hmm.
know, that you can also speak to a professional about. Okay. And I'm assuming that when it comes to us discussing these particular topics, we're going to have a professional come in and talk about it. Okay. So a lot of these things, when we're talking about a will, we're talking about a living trust, and we're talking about ways to build wealth, we're going to have a professional come in and talk about those particular topics.
Hmm.
The education that we're trying to provide is going to actually help you, and help you to understand that, hey, even though you may not have had that particular experience coming up as a child, it's never too late to learn this stuff.
Right.
Okay. And the more prepared you are financially, because finances play a big part, you know, in your lifestyle, your legacy, wealth building, and also being able to pass this on to your children, you know. So we need to take a step back and say, okay, a lot of us are making good money, we're doing pretty well. How do we manage that money moving forward? You
Right.
know, and I think it's something that we need to really um, listen to some of the experts that are going to be coming on the show, on the podcast, and also listen to the experiences that both Vanessa and I have had. And I think a lot of you will get a lot out of this conversation here.
Absolutely. With that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, people, to wrap it up. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to take this on out with one tip this week, and that's regarding predatory lending. Don't be a victim. If this has happened to you, report it. And we're going to give you some reporting agencies down in the description box, so you can call if you've been a victim of predatory lending. Be aware, do your homework when seeking a lender, and hire the right real estate agent. If you're in North Carolina, you all know who to call. um, Next week, we're going to talk. This week was an overview, but next week we're going to get into a more personalized approach and focus on what we can do as individuals to start building wealth in our communities and within our families. Subscribers, we want to thank you for staying tuned in with us. Viewers, we need your help. We are aiming to air on iHeartRadio and a variety of other channels come 2026. We need 5,000 subscribers. That will get us on iHeartRadio. We would like to have 5,000 subscribers by December of this year. And here's where you can assist. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and share with others who you believe that will enjoy the show. We'll keep you posted on our progress. If you have something to tell us, feel free to comment. We want to hear from you. This is Vanessa K and Be Real signing off. Until next time, keep growing and stay motivated.